Okay, welcome everyone to the Node.js security team meeting. This is the last of February. So let me share my screen and let's go through the agenda. Okay, share screen. Okay, am I sharing the agenda right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's start with announcement. There is any announcement? If not, we can go with we can start with the actual points of our agenda. So first one is vulnerability review. Let's see. I don't think there is anything, but I think it's because it's actually failing. I saw a comment.
Michael closed some issues with the recent security release, and I think we are good now.
Yeah, I believe we would, I closed those because I believe they should all have been covered, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
they are.
Yeah, okay. And then the
But
tool
it's
should recreate them if not, I think.
yeah, because the tool seems failing, so
Right,
we
okay.
should probably okay. See, there are all these failures. We should probably uh, address this comment from Richard. Maybe add it to the. Oh, well, we can add to the.
Yeah, I know that's a good, yeah, we should keep that on our radar to make sure we look at that sooner than later.
Let's say fix no vulnerabilities and fix the. Okay. For scorecard review, there is not Ulysses today, but I think he left a comment on the. Okay, so let's have a look at the. Okay, so it seems just a few very small delta like bad scores, but most of them are improvements. So I would say that everything's going right. If you want to add something on this, or we can just move to the next point. I think everything is going fine. Okay, so let's say everything. Okay, so last week we had a deep dive on the dependency build audit, and Michael created an issue on how we should approach the like the basically the dependencies that we pull into the project, how we should build them, and so on. Maybe Michael, you want to talk a bit about this?
Yeah, let me just find that issue. Oh, right. Okay, you got it open. Perfect. So
Yes.
yeah, we worked through a bunch of things, and I think we kind of came up with a few things we thought would be like our basic principles. And like we want to make sure everybody's agreed with these. Otherwise, that is like, you know, they're kind of fundamental to how we choose what to do, right? So the first one was like, we've said that we think pulling things from npm can be considered immutable. So like if we pull tools from npm and we have it, provided that we have like a package lock, npm guarantees that things can't be deleted, and that if we say we want version 10.1.1, we will always got 10.1.1. So the assumption is that's going to be repeatable. However, for code that gets pulled into the dependencies, we want to rebuild things. So just making sure you get the same thing every time isn't necessarily going to be enough. So if we're using tools in our build process, it's okay if those come from npm. But if we're actually putting the code into Node itself, we want to actually be able to rebuild those. And there's no guarantee that like the source is in the npm package and we've got that, connection. I know there's some work to try and improve that and stuff, but like we basically said, we should really have a copy so that we can patch it ourselves, right? So, basically we've said we want to be able to build from canonical source, which is like the source that you need to modify to make a change. There's some dependencies that are like written in TypeScript, for example, and we want the TypeScript source, not the JavaScript source that you may actually run, because if you want to make a change, it can be really hard to change the transform JavaScript because it's not meant to be understandable or whatever. So you really want to have a TypeScript source, which you could modify, regenerate, and so forth. So that's, basically we should have a copy of that canonical source. Unfortunately, GitHub's not immutable. So like there's no guarantee that if there's a GitHub repo that's not in the node's project control, that's always going to be there. Somebody can delete their GitHub repo tomorrow. We should be, and then I just talking a little bit, we should be able to float a patch on it. And we want to be able to reproduce the same results. So we need the same version of the tool. So that's where like, pulling tools from NPM with a patch log is probably okay. But there should also be like no dynamic downloads. So if you're in the build process, you should have already gotten all the tools. It shouldn't be like going out and pulling things and installing them, that kind of stuff. So I think our thought was like if we ran in Docker, we would set up the Docker container so it has no external network access, and we can be sure of that. And there's a couple of categories that like were, when we've, Marco did a good job of reviewing some of the existing ones. And if we look at some of these principles, there's a few that stand out in terms of like categories that probably we're not hitting, we're not implementing those principles today. And those like our was and blob generation, minifying JavaScript and TypeScript, right? So those are the first ones we want to look at. Based on that, any questions on that before I move on to like the sort of our top level proposal?
Nope.
No, okay. So basically based on that, like assuming those are our principles, our proposed approach for transform steps that we can't be done in make node. And actually, I guess I forgot to say that up front. Like ideally, when we do make node, we would build from the canonical source and everything, right? Like, but we know that's not possible. So things like the WASM blobs, we don't want to install all the WASM tools. Like all the extra tooling across all of our platforms just isn't feasible. So we know there's some cases that aren't going to hit that. And so in those cases, we want to have the source for any transform or build steps. So we want the source that we want the canonical source where that you need to start with. So whatever the code you would want to modify to do a patch, you want that stored somewhere. And we want that code to be in the control of our project somehow. Like we want to have it in a copy in the depths. We might have a fork of the repo. We might have a copy of the tarball. So like if we're downloading dynamically OpenSSL tarballs, we should probably store that somewhere so that we know we can recreate it later on versus relying on it being stored somewhere that may or may not exist when we want to do a security release, that kind of stuff.
Michael,
yeah.
Just a question. In which field these I like the proposal. Just a second. Alexa, sorry.
Yeah.
In which field this approach, or at least why this fits in the security space and not in the build space?
It really is the supply chain security aspect of things, right? Like if you are dynamically, for example, if you dynamically pull things in, you don't know what you're pulling in, right? And So if you look at like salsa and a lot of those, things that are being talked about, those are considered part of supply chain security. And they talk about like how reproducible is your build? Do you know how you're building? Do you know the steps that you're taking to do the builds? Can you get the same copy of what you're building from and all those things, right? So I think that is where I would point to is like these things that are being discussed in the security space for supply chain security. If you look at their checklists, like doing this is going to help us meet some of the things on those checklists.
Just one thing that I mean, I understand the motivation, but if we are not able to do it for 100% of Node.js binary, including WASM and TypeScript, minified JavaScript, as you mentioned, uh, which value it will bring to us?
I don't think like there's work, right? So like it's not like we're necessarily going to do this overnight.
Yeah.
But it comes back to like, do we believe supply chain security is important or not? If it is, we should incrementally work towards addressing the requirements there.
So when you say the supply chain security is in the old Node.js dependencies, but not like the ecosystem of Node.js, right?
Sorry, say that again.
When you say the supply chain security, you are saying about Node.js dependency vendors, but not the Node.js npm package managers, for instance, sorry, npm package registry or something like that.
No,
It's not.
no,
Yeah.
this is strictly talking about things that go into the node binaries that we ship, right? Like, for example,
Mhm.
the WASM that gets generated for Indici or for the CGS module Lexer, like that goes into Node, right? So that's actively running code. And so, from the supply chain security side of things, you want to know what the source was that generated that. You want to be able to say,
Yeah.
could look at that. There's nothing malicious in there. We know where it came from all that kind of stuff.
I'm just feeling that uh, it is a considerable amount of work for a field that we are not, that there is no historical data that tell us that this is a problem or something that Node.js is definitely not looking to it, right? We have some reactive workflows that checks for each dependency. We normally trust on all dependencies that Node.js vendors. We do some checks. We have our security workflow. Uh, Considering this is not a problem, and I don't expect to be a problem in the future, I just wondering how much it will take for the value it will bring to us.
So this is
Um,
not a problem until it is. So this is like with
Yeah.
security.
yeah.
So it is like that. And I think uh, the biggest value is probably the how easy it becomes then to debug and reproduce issues when, for example, we build our dependencies because they are built in the same container. Or, for example, how easy it is to float a patch in case the maintainer doesn't want to uh, doesn't want to ship that patch for some reason and we need it, or if someone we do trust our dependencies, but this is because nothing has happened before. And on another topic, I think this is also a bit of a joint effort between the security and build working group because also we don't have access to machines to set up all the work that it would be required. So I think this is in something in the middle.
Yeah, build really is about providing the infrastructure, not how it gets built. So, but I think that, the way I would say, if I'm like 95% sure if we go to the Alpha Omega team that's providing us funding and ask them if supply chain security is something they want us to work on, they're going to say yes.
Yep.
right? And
But
so that's where I'm like, I think that's going to be the answer. And since they're providing us some funding, it's reasonable to use resources that we have to move that forward.
mhm.
I'm not saying we'll be, that we're going to be able to fix it all today or tomorrow, but like these kinds of things, you got to say, we want to get to here and we're going to make incremental work on that. But that is the first thing to agree. Like, we got to agree that this is something we should be doing, and that's why we sort of put the principles. And if people are like, nope, we don't really care about that, then it's, there's no point doing some work if
Okay.
we sort of get consensus that we should move forward.
My point is not about like if that's was you used for it's good for us not it's of course that's great to have, but in terms of priority and actually uh, considering the time we will need to spend on that versus the value it will bring to us, I feel that working also in the supply chain security, but on a different side other than the Node.js binary itself, but targeting users, like how users will consume packages or how users will read access to the environment. It's more valuable considering the time you need to 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 invest on that. Uh, but well, definitely it's something that we would
Yeah.
like to have.
Those are two different topics, in my opinion. Like they're both very valid and actionable, but they're two different things. Like one, like obviously the ecosystem supply chain is very important, but if for some reason something sketch is pulled in Node.js from one of the dependencies, then it's also going to impact the whole ecosystem.
Yeah,
Probably,
but
uh,
if that happens, it's not just Node.js that will be screwed.
yeah. So we don't want that to happen.
So my point is just that uh, I feel that this task will require a considerable amount of time for someone founded by Alpha Omega, for instance. And and time is valuable, and I feel that we might have other priorities or things that might be more easy to get feedback or easy to working on. Not easy, easy is not the correct word, but I meant something more uh, easy to iterate. Because on this case, until the only state is to do and done this proposal. We don't have a middle term.
Mm,
We can't
No,
stop
no,
it in.
there is a
So you
middle
easily
term.
do it bit by bit.
Yeah, but if you don't have a final result, it doesn't matter, right?
I don't agree with that at all. That's like saying, like, almost all the things we do, like say the dependency updaters, right? Like we got quite a bit of value by having half of them in place, right? Because now we don't have to manually update the first half.
Yeah.
This is comes down to like risk management. So our risk is could be half of what it was, right? Like so that's still I think like in terms of prioritization, say of the Alpha Mega funding, that we can look at when, I think we've in the past said like here are the priorities for that our security resource, right? And so we can handle that as what are the competing things, and like we'll all agree we got to do a security release, we got to do security fixes. That's the top thing, right? Then, if we're not doing that, what's the next thing? So I think it's best to just handle that as, here's the list of things we'd like to do, and then what are the relative priorities as part of that.
Okay.
So it's kind of because like priorities are always a hard thing, right? Like I think the fundamental thing, like from my perspective, supply chain security is a really is something that the ecosystem slash like if we again that's where I go back to like if we asked them about the funding and we went to the security the OpenJS security collaboration space on security, I think they would tell us supply chain security is quite important. So I think this falls into that, and so like, but
Yeah,
you know, but that's separate of whether that's our top priority or not, right?
yeah, I know that. I mean, supply chain security is top priority. I know that. I just saying that there are two sides of supply chain security. One is in the node, and the other one is in ecosystem. And what I meant is that perhaps it's better to focus on the ecosystem than in the node binary, as we already have some checks in place. But for the ecosystem, it lacks a lot. That's what.
Right. And so that's just like, you know, I think in terms of the prioritization, it can just be like, we could do this, we could do this.
Yeah.
Which do we think we want to invest the time in? And like, you know, not everything is done in the security workspace strictly by the funding, right? So like identifying the things we'd like to do, and then when people can help out to help move them forward. And the first step, like the first step that we've been working on is like, let's define what we'd like to do, right? Because that's sort of often the enabler for people to volunteer to say, yeah, okay, now that we understand what we want to do, let's volunteer to do the steps along the way, right?
Fair enough.
So yeah, I think I don't know if we need to go through the whole thing, but like the proposed approach was based on those principles. And you know, in the end, we, you know, the key things are that we keep a copy of the source, like the canonical source that we can start with. So like we could start from that source again, and then the build steps we want to run like in a constrained environment, like a Docker container. And that Docker container, like we know what tool we actually keep a copy of the container so that we can run with the exact same tools. You know, for example, today we build our WASM in a container, but it dynamically installs the tools, and they could be a different version every time. So we should build that container once, store it somewhere, and if we have to do a rebuild, you know, 2 years from now, we still can, because we can run in that same container. And then the updater can basically, like, for those steps that require a transform, you know, if the updater is just copying source and then that source is used in make node, we're done. But if the updater has steps that actually do transforms, it should use that Docker container with the known resources to do the transform steps, like whether it's TypeScript or WASM or whatever, and then do the builds. So we did have a few next steps, like, well, where would we store containers? How would we store tarballs? And like Njitsi seemed like a good, I think Marco suggested that as a good example in terms of like, how could we apply this approach to that?
Yeah, at least for critical, like for dependencies which require WASM or binaries to be built, I think this is important. For like, I think that those are the priorities. The ones who, for example, TypeScript, then like could come after, but I think it's important to have a priority in terms of the ones that we should work on. Okay, so I think the next step is to like figure out how to store the Docker file and how to save the Docker image somewhere. And we probably can do that when there is more people who probably are interested, like Ulysses. So I think we can move on now.
Yeah, I think that's like async. Just like if one of us who've been involved in this discussion can find some time to look at and figure out some of these things, that's kind of the next step.
Yeah. All right. Next point, we have the fuzzing security initiative. I think there is we have to wait for someone. Do
Are
you
there
have
any
anything?
updates on that?
Let's see the issue. Which one it is?
Because
Do
I
you
think
have
last time, go ahead.
sorry, did you ask for updates or do you have updates?
No, no, I don't have any update.
No,
I was
Michael.
asking if there are updates. No, I was asking like, are
Okay,
there any updates on the issue?
so I am the point of contact with the OSTF, but they seems to disappear. I don't have feedbacks for like 2 weeks, I guess.
Okay.
Uh,
I think last time we agreed, they
and
agreed they would add the report in in a HackerOne issue that we could then use to share with people.
Yes, but
And that's kind
no
of what we're
updates.
waiting on. I know there was a couple of HackerOne issues open to cover, which then like
oh,
commented that like these were from fuzzing, but the agreement we had last time is like, let's add the report in HackerOne. That means we can then share with like individuals from the security working group and it's easy for other TSC members to see and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So like we can do this asynchronously, and
But yeah, if you
so
do manage to
not.
talk to them, like that would be, at least from my perspective, that's what we were kind of expecting as the next step is to say like, okay, let's put it in a place, the report in a place more people can get at it versus like trying to share through email and whatever.
yeah. Now I remember. Sorry, it was like right after the holidays, I guess.
Yeah.
And they did a research. They found a few things. I was in contact with Daniel and uh, Amir, and I suggest to open HackerOne report because they were not 100% sure if that's a vulnerability or not. So safe approach is to open a HackerOne.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's just, it'd be good, like what we were looking for is an issue that actually has the full report in a hacker, like
Yep.
basically a HackerOne issue that says, hey, we did this fuzzing, here's the report. Because then like I can, we can say in HackerOne, we can invite people to a specific issue. So that's like an easy way for us to share with say other security work group members if we get TSC approval or, like, hey, all TSC members, you can take a look at this, right?
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wait for updates on that. Next point is audit build process for dependencies. I think we discussed that in the probably we can keep
Yeah,
just
that's my question too. How is it? Uh, this is just a second step of auditing build process, right?
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
the proposal we have just mentioned.
Yeah, we can keep just one of those two. No need to keep both.
Yeah, I would
I
keep
think
1037 and
okay,
this
and we
one
can
was,
remove this one.
yeah, I think it was good to have it on the agenda just as like, hey, this is the next step. Like we'd like other security work group members to take a look and chime in and like
Okay,
if the approach doesn't make any sense to somebody, we want that feedback to say like, no, or here's a tweak or suggestion. So it was on the agenda to try and get more input.
okay. So I would say
Yeah.
okay. Then we have an initiative for CI best practices. Um, I don't have any update on this. Let's see if there's something under this issue.
I think one thing that we can do with this new funding, regardless of who will take that, is to revamp all the previous initiatives and current initiatives. Because, for instance, the CII, it's something that we have. Actually, CII is something that needs some burst to be finalized. I know that Ulysses White was taking lead on that, but. I feel that we are just missing the gold level, if I remember correctly, and we did a deep
Yes.
dive on that on a meeting, and I feel that there are just two or three answers to be concluded or waiting for an answer from the Alpha Omega side, I guess, OpenSSF side, and this is another initiative we could mention briefly on our blog post, and also just split a bit our agenda from previous initiatives and almost concluded ones and then the new initiatives, things that needs to be prioritized, and basically new initiatives for 2024.
Yeah, it's a
As
good time in the new year
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
we can
okay.
wait for the funding and ask.
Okay. So I think no update on this one.
No, I think Ulysses mentioned something, but I don't think it's for CII, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it was for the OpenSSF scorecard.
Yeah.
Okay. Then our last point, we have a roadmap or permission model. Rafael.
On the security release, we have released 3 patches for the permission model. Um, there are a few things on my board. I'm prioritizing to create a better design for when throwing exceptions. Currently, if you use, for instance, file system write file sync, it will throw a sync error. If you use write file with a callback, it will also throw a sync error, which should be an async one. So it can be caught by the callback. So that's my idea, but
Um,
I'm not working on that for now.
in terms of roadmap, like how far are we from like considering it stable?
One thing important before considering it stable is to find a way to deal with symlinks. Symlinks currently is the biggest problem of the permission model due to tactile issues, race conditions, and finding a way where it should be, I don't know, it's fixable or something that, or either we remove all the symlinks API or things when permission is enabled, which I don't like, or we find a way to fix that. The problem with removing that when permission model is enabled is that we will never be able to turn on by default, because otherwise APIs will be turned off by default as well. So, for instance, imagine in an ideal world where permission model is enabled by default in a Node.js binary. We can't uh, turn off or remove APIs because of that. So we need to find a way. And but it's like a really long term that needs to be skills and might not ever happen.
Yeah, I don't like. I personally don't see happening to be enabled by default, but this is just my
That's the
opinion because
ideal world in the security space,
it
right?
would break everything, the whole
Yeah.
ecosystem. But okay, no, this was just curiosity. So there is like I would say work going on going forward. Okay, so this was the last point on our agenda. Is there anything else we want to discuss before stopping? If not, thank
Do
you,
you have any
everyone.
updates on the automation of security release? Well, I think we don't have the,
Uh,
right?
no, it's not the. I don't know why it's not the.
I think I removed the flag until we find someone with funding. So I think we need to add that flag again.
Okay, so yeah, we released on the. I opened 2 PRs that are in um, uh, waiting to be reviewed. We received the email from HackerOne that says that they have released the new APIs for CV creation and handling, and I'll start
Right.
testing them
Right.
right away, so we know if we can automate those. But I would like some feedback on this previous PR, so then I can do. I can update iteratively. I'm currently working on the normal release on the 21 so that I get more familiar with releases itself and hopefully become a releaser myself. So yeah, that's it. I will add it again on the agenda.
Great. Yeah. I will review your request. Okay. I didn't have time
Thanks.
or bandwidth to do that in that
Is
way.
is it an appropriate time yet to give like do some information sharing with all the security stewards?
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything. It is
Sorry,
just
I was saying is it time yet to do some information sharing with the security stewards? Like the security stewards are the ones who I know you've been doing them all recently, but like at some point we'll probably go back to the rotation. And
yes.
they're going to be the ones who need to really understand this automation and what's going on and how they're going to use it. So I just want to make sure that as soon as we can, we do a session. We set up a session with those people to say, this is how far, this is like how we think it's going to work, and here's how far we're at. Like even if we haven't implemented it all, I think if we have a good enough feel for how we think it's going to work, it would be really good to at least give the opportunity for people to come and learn about that. I know I could go look at the PRs and all that, but it would be better for me personally to have like, here's the half
Yeah.
hour. And I suspect that might be the same for other people's.
Yeah, we are going to
Yes.
include that. The only thing is that currently the automation for security release stewards is just to create the next security release issue, and I don't think that's something that we need to update the documentation to mention that, because that API might not exist in 2 weeks because we are in active development. So
Yeah,
I would for at least the CVE request automation, and then we update the documentation and teach the rotation.
yeah, my question was, is it time yet? Sounds like you're just saying like, let's wait a little longer, which is fine. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just like
I
the
do agree.
sooner I'd err on this. My feedback is I'd err on the side of like sharing too early versus waiting till it's all done, right? Like it doesn't hurt to give people some info up front, but trust you in terms of like when's the right time to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that for the first API, just to create the issue, we should have something stable soon, I
Like
guess.
a yeah, like a stable workflow that we have tested and
Yeah,
so
the only thing is
probably
that we are designing the new way, the new security release issue actually, because we have created a new repo, we are
Right.
creating the new structure, and we are still developing it, and it might take some time because otherwise we'll just teach things that will change like several
yeah.
measure every single day.
Sometimes that doesn't matter, like it changes a bit, but I again, just asking the question, is it time? If it's not time, that's fine.
Mhm.
Um,
But I think it would be great to, once we have a defined structure, we create a roadmap so they will be aware by just watching the issue.
yeah.
Yep.
But even
Agreed.
like, go saying like, yeah, here's what we've done, here's our roadmap, like giving people the chance to ask some questions is great.
Yep.
All right. Anything else we want to discuss before? All right then. Thank you, everyone. See
Thanks.
you in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
for sharing. Bye.
Bye bye.